In case you ever feel like you're bad at your job, just remember that someone at Infogrames thought it was a great idea to release Motor Mayhem to store shelves 2 days after Twisted Metal Black hit. I picked this game up not too long after its release thanks to a PSM review that gave it high marks, and I was, at first, rather disappointed. This is a game that I wanted to like more than I did at the time, and seeing the PSM logo plastered throughout the game made the quid pro quo pretty obvious. However, in playing this game for this review, a strange thing happened. I've had a hard time putting this game down. In fact, though flawed in many ways, I've come away liking Motor Mayhem a lot more than I really think I should. I know it seems like a strange switch. A game I at first wanted to like but ended up slightly disappointed with now becomes a game I've come to like more than I wanted to. The game has some very obvious flaws, most notably the massive frame rate dips and the floaty physics. When the action gets intense, the game dips into the teens at times, but never quite becomes a slideshow. Its massive frame rate dips can affect the already floaty feeling controls already made less responsive than Twisted Metal's thanks to the over-implemented physics engine. In fact, to say this game feels like playing Twisted Metal with a moon gravity mutator on isn't an exaggeration. The game is extra floaty, and even bumping small corners can send you flying through the air, making even the smallest contact a much more complicated deal than need be. You either float or stop in your tracks, making the controls feel extremely loose and floaty overall. The game also comes off as incredibly generic, from the characters to the weapons to even the map designs. The whole game lacks any particular flavor of its own. I would blame this partly on it taking the Unreal Tournament approach to car combat. Before Twisted Metal hit, there were a couple vehicular combat games that tried going to the no-frills bot deathmatch single-player mode route, nixing the story and backgrounds and just feeling like a tournament game. 3DO took their Battle Tank series, gutted it of its charm in single-player mode, and turned it into a generic-feeling tournament-style game in World Destruction League Thunder Tanks. And they also released War Jets, Jets with a Z, which I've yet to play. In similar generic fashion, this game is called Motor Mayhem Vehicular Combat League. I guess both 3DO and Infogrames wanted to start leagues before Incognito set them straight with Twisted Metal Black. When I booted this game up, playing through the single player all the way through with one of the characters, I was at first thinking I was going to say this is a flawed game that only forgiving gamers could get into. And well, that's actually true. Even though I have come to like this game a lot, I can definitely say that with the frame rate, physics, and control issues, some might find this game to be unplayable. My first playthrough didn't do much for me. I came out of it just as underwhelmed as I had been in the past. The single player mode has players beating 3 tournaments: Deathmatch, where you have to score a certain amount of kills in each match to progress; Elimination, which is like the traditional car combat system where you have 1 life to eliminate all the other opponents; and Endurance, where you defeat a list of opponents in 1v1 matches. The ability to save in between battles also means that if you fail and lose a life, you can just exit and reload your save. You can find extra lives in each level anyway, so losing a life isn't a big deal. But why tarnish a perfect record? When you beat all 3 tiers, you unlock Buzzsaw as a playable character. I don't know why I did that voice. It's just so generic. You may as well say Buzzsaw. So there is at least 1 unlockable character in the game. I already had my mind made up on how I was going to review this game, but in order to make the review complete, I had to jump into the bot deathmatches just to mention how they were. I turned on 6 bots, knowing the frame rate was going to tank, and chose a level that wasn't available in the single player, and sure enough, with all the carnage, the frame rate tanked. However, for as bland as I found the single player experience to be, I had a blast playing the bot deathmatches. I've always been a big fan of bot deathmatches in first-person shooters, and Motor Mayhem's bot multiplayer had the same effect on me. I could play these bot deathmatches for hours, and that's exactly what I did. Different maps, dropping the bot count, changing the kill counts, it didn't matter. I was drawn into this game for hours upon hours. I've actually come to enjoy the multiplayer mode in Motor Mayhem more than the ones in Twisted Metal Black and Thunder Tanks. Simple, yet mayhem-filled fun that I've lost hours to in the last couple of days. I really like the deathmatch mode in this game, and playing it over and over has even allowed me to settle in and enjoy the single player more as well. There is even a 2-player split screen screen mode where you can play against a friend and up to 2 bots to simulate 4-player death matches. While the frame rate certainly has issues, I'm from the GoldenEye generation, and if we enjoyed 15 frames per second multiplayer in that game, I definitely enjoyed the incredible carnage in this game. I've had a lot more fun than I ever expected just playing the multiplayer, and it's too bad my high school friends were such weenies that they would only play games against me if they knew they could beat me, because we could have had a lot more fun with this game when I bought it, if they had just decided to play it. And though the controls are a bit floaty and sluggish and bogged down when the frame rate dips, one cool aspect comes with the special button. Like in Twisted Metal, you can put in button combinations to do special attacks. Motor Mayhem handles this by making players hold the L1 button and put in fighting game style combos with the face buttons. Each character has their own specific combinations, which makes owning the game's manual or finding an FAQ a necessity. The instructions in the manual are a little vague. Instead of saying hit circle, X circle, they say things like hit break, power break, and break. Once you learn the combos, using each character's special attacks becomes an integral part of the game and gives the combat a surprising amount of depth. Another integral part comes with holding the power break to do a fast turn. At first, turning feels sluggish, but mastering the quick turn is imperative and also becomes second nature in the midst of battle. The arenas are well designed, and while not the epic-sized arenas in games like Twisted Metal Black, still have their share of hidden areas and items to find. Some are simple and straightforward, but others are more complex. Overall, I like the arenas offered here. There is a little exploration to be had, but they are pretty simple overall. Some even having some cool destructible portions, and the locales range from spaceships to ancient ruins to even the airport. As I mentioned earlier, the controls feel loose and extra floaty, and I was going to write them off as sometimes being so delayed and terrible when the frame rate gets bad, they almost become completely unwieldy. However, there was a problem I discovered with my setup that was making the controls worse. If you are using an upscaler that adds a delay to the controls, like the RetroTink 2X Pro I'm using for this footage, the game's control issues will be magnified. The RetroTink also makes the screen a little choppy when the frame rate dips. I found that my little cheapy Hyperkin cable I bought was more responsive in the controls and handled the slowdown like a champ without making the screen choppy. Honestly, if you're wanting upscaling and a better playing experience, this little $30 to $40 cable is the better buy, even if it doesn't look as crisp and has a bit of a softening filter. And superior to both of them is that when I was writing this review, I decided to plug the game into my old Symphonic LCD TV, which is a first-gen progressive scan TV, and even with a simple S-video connection, it already looked better and played better than any upscaler could match. Sometimes just playing these games on period-appropriate TVs makes them look and play so much better than any of the best modern solutions. So while even on an old TV the controls do get a little unresponsive when slowdown hits, I was going to rate this game worse in this department because of the RetroTink. Don't get me wrong, the controls are still looser than Twisted Metal and still have their issues, especially with the physics, and the game never bogged down to unplayable with either upscale methods. However, if you are upscaling, just know that this game feels so much better on an old TV, and the lag is noticeable when switching between them. The controls do feel a bit loose in general with things like turning and moving, but the game's strange physics engine is far more a hindrance to the controls than any amount of slowdown. They feel way too floaty, and the general physics in the game are wonky. For example, using the bounce pads, like those found in games like Unreal Tournament, is incredibly unpredictable to where they will actually send you. Bouncing up to a higher platform, which is usually a lot more controlled in first-person shooters, can be made a lot harder than it need be. I have found that if you hit them on a turn, you have a better chance of going where you want to, but if you hit them too fast, you'll miss the ledge. This makes this gameplay mechanic feel unreliable to use at most times. If the devs would have worked to tone down the extra bounce, the physics could have been a plus and not a hindrance as they often are in this game. The general graphics look good for a 2001 PS2 game. 2001 would have been the second generation of PS2 graphics on the console, as developers were finally learning how to use the system properly to produce better looking games. Unfortunately, the developer Beyond Games didn't have time to better optimize Motor Mayhem before it shipped. If the frame rate problems were ironed out, this game would look great for the time and play even better. I don't know if this game was rushed to beat Twisted Metal Black to the market, but if that's what they were actually trying to do, they obviously failed. The art direction in the game is pretty generic, but I like its mixture of sci-fi arenas mixed with organic environments. It does actually remind me a little bit of Unreal Tournament's mixture of environments. The character designs are also generic, but their special attacks set them apart from each other. The music is, well, I'm not really sure. The sound of the game drowns out the music to the extent that I have no idea if the music is good or bad, because I've pretty much never heard it. I had to stop and boot the game up, and in the DVD extras menu, where there are a few videos on the making of the game, there is a sound test where you can listen to the music, and the tunes aren't bad. Simple electronic songs that remind me of something you could make using Magic's Music Maker. The sound effects are hard-hitting and sound good as well. Nothing exemplary, but nothing annoying either. Things like the minigun and explosion effects sound about as you would expect them to. The bottom line, Motor Mayhem may have that Twisted Metal at home feel to it, coming off as generic overall, but coming back to it after all these years has helped me come to appreciate it a lot more than I thought I would. Its technical issues and so single player keep this game from being an underrated or hidden gem in my book, but I still had a ton of fun playing the quick brawl mode for some simple bot deathmatches. If you can look past the bland presentation, you can have a lot of fun fragging bots in this game. If you're not a bot deathmatch kind of person, or are looking for something similar in quality to Twisted Metal, this game probably won't do anything for you.